Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be presenting Chapter 9 of Human Development on Social and Emotional Development. Okay. So, for my introduction, I'm going to be talking about like the key concepts of what I'm going to be going over in my presentation. So, we're going to be talking about, early social bonds of babies and their caregivers, the different type of temperament and patterns, attachment and attachment theories and examples of that, how it could affect a child and the different kinds of attachment that there is. We're later on going to be talking about the relations of parents and peers, and the different parenting styles and cultures of how they allow the child to grow up to be, and gender roles, and my conclusion. So something that I forgot to mention in the beginning was the definition of social and emotional development. So social and emotional development is the process of learning and being able to understand one's emotions and learning from others and being able to manage your feelings and relationships. And this kind of like includes like different skills and like your emotions and forming relationships and a bond and making it like a, a great decision and interacting with the environment. This kind of development can can start, at birth, and it's how it could allow the child to grow up successfully in life, as a person, and like going to school and things like that, like finding a partner and things like that. So these are some important things that children need to have to explore and to like help shape them in the future as they're getting older. Okay, so we're gonna be talking about the early social bonds, which is where mostly in general, in the early stages of the child, and their early interactions, infants are naturally attached to their caregivers, and majority will be their mothers. So, that's a way how they start forming a emotional bond that creates that is created before birth. So an example of this would be right here, which is a skin to skin technique that people usually do uh when the child is born. They have that kind of skin to skin contact, which is a way of how they start forming that type of bonding, emotional bond that they're gonna be experiencing daily in those interactions. So it's a great way to start that interaction with a child once they're born. And um babies, they start to recognize, their mother's faces, father's faces, and that types of stuff. And that's a way how they respond to her emotional expressions. So, like I said right here, infants recognize their mother's face within days and emotions to her emotions. Infants can't speak, but they do show a range of emotions. So, early bonds are really important because it's a way where you start to develop your trust and your emotions and your security to the child so they know that they're safe, and that's a way of how you gain their trust to you. Well, some importance about early development is that it helps shape the child's future relationships as they go on growing, and like their health and their emotions and and that the early bonding and that attachment that they need as they're growing up. Up next, we're going to be doing temperament and patterns. It's where infants are born with different temperaments. Some are happy, active, and others are um, angrier or fussier. Temperament is a infant's individual style or a frequency of expressing needs and emotions. Biologically, it's based and genetically influenced. So I was gonna actually ask a question of if anyone in high school as a junior or senior, I believe that they used to have the robot babies. So those babies are a great example of this because, everyone's baby in that time as robots were different. Some were uh some of them require more work, like taking care of them and, crying and feeding them, while others were like a little bit more calmer and didn't bother that much of their needs that they needed. So another example would be right here of the picture. Right here we have a baby that's curious, and then we have a baby here that's happy. So I wanted to give that example because we're gonna be talking about the three different types of temperament patterns that there is. So, first we have the easy babies, which is when a child is predictable, cheerful, and rarely fussy. Which is basically like this child right here, and I would consider it to be my child that I had as a robot baby because it didn't really cry a lot, and it would seem to like sleeping a lot, so I'm happy about that. But I had my friend who actually had a difficult baby where the baby was, very angry and irregular and that type of stuff. Like it was constantly mad or, upset and that stuff. And lastly, we have slow to warm up babies, which are babies that are cautious but eventually enjoy their new experiences. And there is also temperament varieties along the three dimensions, which is urgency, extravision, which is outgoing and seek stimulation. We have effortful control, which is where it focuses on attention and response inhibition. And we have negative activacy, which is fearful, angry, or frustrated. Okay. So we're going to be talking about now the attachment. So attachment is a deep, affectionate, close, and enduring relationship with a person who has shared many experiences with the baby. So this is attachment theory, where it's the idea where a child can form a close attachment to their earliest caregivers, which would be their mom, mostly the mom and the dad, and that this attachment pattern can affect aspects of the child's life later on in life. So, there was something that was proposed about attachment theory. It was when infants develop a deep emotional bond with caregivers, which is the essential of their safety and emotional health. So, there is a theory of John Bowlby's attachment theory, which is uh, that infants proposed more of a biological and emotional bond with their primary caregivers for some kind of like survival and development. It was known to it was known as an attachment because it's created through consistent and responsive caregiving, um, which which is typically around the child that's like 6 months and like to the age of 2 years old, and it influenced the child's social and emotional development through their life. So there was, different types of attachment, which was secure and insecure attachments, which we'll be talking about it later on in the in the uh in the presentation. John Bowlby first proposed this theory after observing orphanage children's emotional scarring, emphasizing the importance of secure attachment. Okay, so Harry Hollow's monkey uh, study was an experiment of it was an experiment of conducting monkeys, where he was able to explore the love and attachment. These types of experiments helped him develop the the infants of the baby monkeys, where they had two choices, which was, as they said, it's right here. um, they have two choices, which was either the wire mother with the feeding bottle, or there was a wire mother with the feeding bottle, but it had clothing on it, and it had like the mother's scent and that kind of stuff. And obviously the baby monkey preferred, the soft contouring cloth mother over the wired one. It's it showed that emotional bonds are formed through contact and not just by, by giving them food. Uh it highlighted the importance of comfort and attachment. The monkeys deprived of social contact showed several behavioral and emotional problems into childhood, into adulthood, sorry. And it included difficulties with mating and sharing offsprings. And now we're gonna be watching the video of the crash course, which I will have up right now.
So you've probably seen a little kid react to a sudden bang or a terrifying clown or some strange Santa at the mall, right? Yeah, not pretty. That child probably immediately reached for a parent looking for comfort, and that same kid might freak out if she was separated from her adult of choice, especially if she was in an unfamiliar environment. It's called attachment, and if you've ever seen a clingy kid, you know why it's called that. They attach. For a long time, psychologists assumed that this was just an intense, innate survival instinct. I mean, it makes sense that babies would be attached to their food source, and bigger kids would stick around the people who helped them survive. But in the 1950s, American psychologists Harry and Margaret Harlow came along with a barrel of monkeys, complicating and illuminating our idea of bonding with caregivers in what has to be one of the saddest psychological experiments of all time. The Harlows were breeding rhesus macaque monkeys for their research on learning. Part of the process involved separating babies from their mothers right after birth, which, yeah, pretty cruel already. They began noticing the baby monkeys were very attached to the blankets they had in their cages, so they set up an experiment. They created two artificial mothers. One was a bare wire cylinder with a feeding bottle attached. They called that wire mother, and the other was a cozier cloth and foam wrapped cylinder without a feeding bottle, cloth mother. It took no time at all to see the baby's preference. They overwhelmingly preferred the comfy cloth mama, clinging to it whenever they seemed to be anxious or in need of comfort. And sometimes they fed from the wire mother with the baby bottle while standing on the cloth one. This discovery that attachment wasn't just about getting breakfast surprised a lot of people. It turns out that contact and touch are vital to attachment, learning, emotional well-being, and psychological development. As the brain and mind develop in infants, so too do their emotions and social behavior. Caregivers can greatly influence this development, and most psychologists will tell you that how a child is raised early on on can have a huge effect on how they view the world, other people, and themselves, not to mention how they react to stressful situations or sort out moral dilemmas. I mean, it's a big, complex, challenging world out there, and wire monkey baby mama just ain't gonna cut it. Touch. You can convey all sorts of emotions through touch. A hug, a slap, a pat on the back, a poke in the side, all convey meaning. Babies learn a lot through touch. It's how they feel security and trust. So you can imagine how the Harlow's poor macaques who were separated not just from their mothers, but everyone, grew up to have some social issues as adults. That maybe putting it too mildly. Those monkeys showed many signs of being really disturbed, from trouble eating to rocking back and forth in a trance to even engaging in self-mutilation. Most of the macaques used in the study never recovered, and those who were forced into pregnancy didn't know how to care for their own offspring. Although the Harlow's research taught us a lot, it was inhumane and would never pass today's ethical standards. Monkeys, like humans, need to be loved. And loving touch and care are tremendously important, but familiarity is also key to attachment. When you're little, a hug from a stranger isn't the same as a hug from your mom or your grandma or your dad or your zookeeper or whomever you're most comfortable and familiar with. The unfamiliar can cause anxiety. And for some critters, all these factors need to come together sooner rather than later. Some baby animals experience a critical period in early life when certain things have to happen for normal development to occur. For ducks and geese, that critical period occurs just after hatching, when they accept the first moving object they see as their mother. This so-called imprinting process can be difficult to reverse, which can make things a bit awkward if that moving thing is a golden retriever or a person or a beach ball. Thankfully, human babies don't imprint. The world would be a lot different and a lot more bizarre if they did. Human babies do, however, feel a lot more comfortable around people, things, and settings that they are familiar with. They form emotional attachments, but not all attachments are created equal. In the 1970s, American psychologist Mary Ainsworth created the strange situation experiment to observe children's different attachment styles. She'd put a 1-year-old kid and their mom in an unfamiliar room, like a playroom at the lab, and then observe the child playing with the mother. Eventually, the child would encounter something potentially stressful, like a stranger would come in and interact with the child, and then the mom would leave. If the kid freaked out, the stranger would try to comfort them. Then mom would come back and the stranger would leave. Different children responded differently to the strange situation. Ainsworth measured and observed 4 different categories of behavior, including separation anxiety, the child's willingness to explore, stranger anxiety, and reunion behavior, or how the child reacted when the mom returned, which was what she was particularly interested in. Ainsworth broke this behavior down into 3 main attachment styles: secure, insecure avoidant, and insecure ambivalent. About 70% of her subjects showed secure attachment and could happily explore their new digs and interact with the strangers so long as their mom was nearby. If mom left, they might freak out a bit, but they greeted her return in a happy and positive way. About 15% of the kids demonstrated insecure ambivalent attachment. They were afraid of the stranger, cried more, and explored less, and had a major freak out when mom left, only to act all salty and mad when she returned. The last 15% or so showed insecure avoidant attachment. They were fine with the stranger, kind of indifferent actually, didn't cling to mom, didn't seem bothered when she left, showed little interest upon her return. Ainsworth observed that sensitive, attentive mothers usually raised securely attached kids, whereas less responsive mothers, who often ignored their children, or super anxious mothers who obsessed over every little thing, often raised insecurely attached toddlers. And then, of course, on the extreme, the poor monkeys with their unresponsive fake moms, they became absolutely terrified in unfamiliar situations. Attachment is vital. It builds the foundation for our sense of basic trust, and quite possibly for our adult relationships, our motivation to achieve, and our willingness to be bold, like that toddler playing with new toys in a strange room. Given what those messed up monkeys taught us, it should be no surprise that disruptions in attachment can bring a world of pain. Babies raised under abuse or extreme neglect are often withdrawn and frightened, and many parents who've engaged in abusive behavior were abused themselves as children. Young kids exposed to extended abuse, trauma, and neglect are at higher risk for psychological disorders, health problems, and substance abuse as adults. Studies of children raised in understaffed Romanian orphanages, for example, found that they scored lower in cognitive tests and were twice as likely to exhibit symptoms of anxiety as their counterparts raised in quality foster homes. It's certainly true that some kids can show remarkable resilience, but disrupted attachment and care, often further complicated by social and economic marginalization of all kinds, can leave lifelong scars. So if one of infancy's major social achievements is forming forming positive attachments, then one of the biggest achievements in childhood would have to be achieving a positive sense of self. This self concept, or an understanding and evaluation of who we are, is usually pretty solid by about the time we turn 12. Charles Darwin proposed that our self awareness begins when we can recognize ourselves in a mirror. This self recognition typically doesn't occur in humans under 15 to 18 months. And by the time that tot's headed to kindergarten, their self concept is rapidly expanding. They probably know their age, hair color, and family name. Perhaps they know they're good at drawing and not so good at tree climbing, and they're noticing the differences and similarities they share with other people. Kids with positive self-images are more happy, confident, independent, and sociable. So, how can we instill these values and security in kids, and how does parenting affect development? Whether your parents were aloof or affectionate, strict or lax, and whether they spanked you or preferred to talk it out, one model of parenting would probably categorize them into one of three major styles, all related to control. The authoritarian parent makes rules with consequences and expects you to follow them because I said so, and tends to not be very warm to their child. Whereas the permissive parent often caves to their child's demands and exerts little control over any of the child's behavior. The authoritative parent, meanwhile, seeks to find a balance between the two. They are demanding but always explain the reasons for their rules and are loving and responsive. And of course, research indicates that finding that culturally appropriate sweet spot between too hard and too soft is the best way to go. Now, in addition to that growing sense of self, two other important landmarks of childhood and adolescence are the ability to discern right from wrong and the formation of individual character. When those two things combine, they give us morality. Last week, we talked about Jean Piaget and his three-tiered model for cognitive development. Well, American psychologist Lawrence Kohlberg modified and expanded on that and blew it up into his own three-level theory of moral development, which emphasized the notion that our moral reasoning continues to develop throughout our lives. Kohlberg outlined his theory by posing a series of moral dilemmas to children, teens, and adults, and then analyzing their reasoning behind the judgments. One of his most famous questions is known as the Heinz dilemma. A woman is dying of cancer. There's a special new...
Okay, I'm gonna stop the video here so we can go on to the next. Okay, so now we're gonna be talking about the different types of attachments, which is also known as the strange situation. So another thing is that attachment comes from different behavior. So it would also be the attachment behavior, which is where actions of like where the child is crying, smiling, vocalizing, and gesturing that can help bring an infant into a closer connection with its caregiver. So this is this kind of attachment um is also known as the strange situation, which is a research method where infants explore a unfamiliar room while their reactions to separation and reunions with their caregivers reveal a attachment style which was created by Mary Ainsworth. So I have a chart right here that is gonna give us, a visual um idea of, the different types of attachments that there is. So first off, we have the insecure attachment, which is where a child explores freely, seeking comfort upon return. So right here in this chart, in the infant chart, the infant attachment theories, it shows insecure. The child, hugging its mother. And it says child becomes distressed when parent leaves, but is easily comfort comforted when the parent returns. Okay. Up next we have insecure avoidment, which is where the child ignore or avoids the mother or the caregiver. So avoidment. Child is not distressed when parent leaves and ignores parent when they return. This is the child's convert way of managing their anxiety. So you can see that the child right here is not really paying a lot of attention to her mother. So she's like kind of enjoying herself being alone, but at the same time is learning not to have that much of a connection with her mother. No, I can't say. This is the convert. This is the child's convert way of managing their own anxiety. Up next, we have insecure, ambivalent, and resistant, which is where a child is upset when the caregiver leaves and becomes angry and rejects the caregiver upon their return. So it'll be anxious resistant, which is child is depressed when parent leaves and seeks to punish the parent by displaying over feelings such as anger. As you can see, that the child right here is crying and angry, and the parent doesn't know why the child is like that. And then we have disorganized, which is inconsistent, confused behaviors, often crying again after comfort. So this would be disorganized, which is child does not have a predictable pattern of attachment. It includes child who displays signs of depression and disturbing behavior. Okay, so now I'm gonna be showing you guys a video of how it explains Bowlby's attachment theory and the different ways of how the attachment styles affect a child, and like examples and the definition as well as the attachment styles.
Hi, welcome to Mr. Brain Parenting Series. Are you a parent? Parenting is a wonderful journey, but let's face it, it can be challenging too. Every parent has the desire to become a good parent and foster the best possible development for their child. That's why we're here to help. In this video, we'll explore the theory of attachment, proposed by psychologist John Bowlby, which is a cornerstone in the field of developmental psychology. It delves into the profound emotional bond that forms between infants and their caregivers, emphasizing the crucial role it plays in shaping an individual's social and emotional development throughout their lifespan. To illustrate the theory of attachment, let's delve into the story of David, a 6-month-old infant, and his caregiver, Sarah. David and Sarah shared a strong and secure attachment, laying the foundation for David's emotional development. Since David's birth, Sarah consistently responded to David's needs with sensitivity and warmth. Whenever David cried, Sarah promptly attended to him, soothing him with gentle touch and nurturing words. David learned to trust that his caregiver would always be there for him, providing comfort and security. This secure attachment became the bedrock for David's exploration of the world. On one occasion, David encountered a new and unfamiliar situation. He attended a playgroup with other infants and their caregivers. David felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. Sarah observed David's emotions and understood his need for support. David glanced back at Sarah, who smiled warmly, signaling encouragement. Filled with newfound confidence, David engaged with the other infants, gradually forming connections with his peers. As the playgroup continued, David encountered a small mishap that left him feeling upset. He immediately sought solace from Sarah, who swiftly picked him up and comforted him with a reassuring embrace. David's distress dissipated, and he felt secure once again. With Sarah by his side, David learned that he could face challenges and setbacks, knowing he had a safe haven to return to for comfort and support. David's secure attachment with Sarah continued to influence his emotional development in various ways. As he grew older, David demonstrated strong emotional regulation skills, displaying resilience in the face of adversity. He developed a positive self-esteem, having internalized Sarah's consistent and loving responses. David's secure attachment with Sarah provided a solid foundation for him to form healthy and secure relationships with others throughout his life. The theory of attachment also highlights the potential consequences of disrupted or insecure attachment relationships. Bowlby identified 3 main types of insecure attachment: avoidant, ambivalent, and disorganized. Let's explore each of these styles. 1. Avoidant attachment. Mr. Johnson, father of a boy named Alex, was a busy businessman, often preoccupied with work. Whenever Alex sought his attention or tried to engage in play, Mr. Johnson would be dismissive, saying, "I'm busy right now, Alex. Go play by yourself." This repeated pattern left Alex feeling neglected and ignored. As Alex grew older, he learned that his attempts to seek comfort or attention from his father were often met with a lack of responsiveness. Consequently, he developed an avoidant attachment style. Alex became self-reliant and learned to suppress his need for emotional closeness, fearing that reaching out for comfort would be futile. In school, Alex would rarely ask for help from his teachers, even when he struggled with assignments. He preferred to figure things out on his own, avoiding seeking support from others. Although he appeared independent, deep down, he yearned for emotional connection and closeness with others. 2. Ambivalent attachment. Mrs. Johnson, on the other hand, had a different parenting style. She was a loving and affectionate mother, but had inconsistent responses to Alex's emotional needs. There were times when she would shower him with affection and attention, but there were also moments when she was emotionally distant and preoccupied with her own concerns. This inconsistency left Alex feeling anxious and unsure about his mother's availability and responsiveness. He craved her attention and love, but was unsure when he would receive it. As a result, Alex developed an ambivalent, resistant attachment style. In school, Alex sought validation and attention from his teachers and classmates. He would frequently seek reassurance and approval from his peers, often feeling insecure if he wasn't the center of attention. He had difficulty trusting others' support and often displayed mixed behaviors of seeking closeness while simultaneously pushing people away. 3. Disorganized attachment. In the same town lived a girl named Lily. Lily's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, had a tumultuous relationship marked by emotional volatility and occasional outbursts. They struggled with their own unresolved traumas and often projected their fears and anxieties onto Lily. Growing up, Lily witnessed intense arguments and witnessed her parents displaying frightening behavior towards each other. She experienced a sense of confusion, not knowing how to respond or make sense of these situations. The disorganized attachment style began to take shape within Lily. As Lily entered school, she found it challenging to trust authority figures and struggled with emotional regulation. She would often display contradictory behaviors, seeking comfort from her teachers, but becoming fearful and anxious in their presence. Lily's disorganized attachment impacted her ability to form stable and secure relationships as she carried the emotional scars from her early experiences. Remember, understanding attachment styles can help us navigate our relationships more effectively and foster healthier connections. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, take care, and may your...
Okay. So yeah, that's a video that uh will give that that gave us a better understanding of, the different attachment styles and how it could affect um the child early on in life if the parents really don't give um the child, that love and that support that they need in their early childhood. Okay. So now we're gonna be talking about the relations and relationships of parents and peers. So parents or peers are both significantly ways of how they influence a child's emotional and social development through playing through many different roles. So as we all know, parents, they try to secure us and teach us, fundamental skills, and they provide us that amount of the amount of love and like and caring for us, and showing us how we should be, um how we should be growing up. And peers, like around the child's age, they give them an opportunity to, deal with some situations and build relationships with other kids around their age, getting to, know each other and start forming a kind of um a kind of way of like how to separate themselves from the parents, and like finding a way how to um how to grow up individually. Okay. All right. So socialization is a process which students, teachers, and others teach children on the skills and social norms necessary to be well functioning members of the society. So this is actually a fundamental social and emotional development because it teaches us individuals on how to interact with others and how to manage our own emotions. And it's a way of how it shapes us to be, and our ability to start forming a relationship and like going through our own problems and emotions as we're growing up. And also, the main thing about this is parenting styles. The variety patterns of the variety patterns of behavior ranging from permissive to authoring the pat that parent that parent displays as they interact with and discipline their children. Now I'm going to be talking a little bit about trust in infancy, which is according to one of Eric Erickson's theory, which is the first year when babies learn either to trust the world and the people in it. The trust shapes their personalities and relationships later on in life. And it's a way where they build, through consistent and responsive caregiving, and it gives the caregivers a a view like how in how how the caregivers, give infants, their needs like for food, for warmth, affection, and safety. And in Erickson's theory of psychological development, it it determines either a child develops a sense of trust or mistrust in the world, in the world around them. And okay, so there is four different types of parenting styles, which is authoring, permissive, authoritative, and uninvolved. So as we have right here, I also have another image here, which shows authoring, which is a parent who is strict, punishing, and not encouraging independence. You can see right here, the dad is yelling, and in a way, that's yeah, it's like he's very mad, I'm guessing, and very strict, and like he wants things to be done in a certain way, you know. So next on we have permissive, which is very freely, where this kind of parent gives that child a lot of freedom to do like whatever they want, and anything that they want, anything that they want to have. Authoritative is balanced, firm, but caring, encouraging independence and responsibility. Sorry. And uninvolved is when a parent is indifferent and neglectful. So it will be that the parent might be, neglectful and provide little guidance and support. Okay, so now we're gonna be talking about gender roles. So gender roles or sex roles are patterns of work, appearance, and behaviors that a society associates with with being male or female. Um, so what it means by this is that uh that that gender roles influence social and emotional development by help shaping the child's expression of emotions and their interaction with others, which really helps them uh which it helps them like encourage their behaviors and being able to like be their genders, like being a boy or being a girl. These roles exist in every culture, and they're more strict in some places. So the idea of gender roles is that it's the idea of like how boys or girls should be based on their culture or their society. So in many cultures there's like where boys have to be brave, active, and strong, while girls might be expected to be like nice, gentle, and a little bit more quiet. These ideas come from like traditional cultures, families, and from parenting. And the different types of cultures also have different ideas of gender roles, sorry. In some places, boys and girls are encouraged to do many of the same things. Over time, many cultures are changing and allowing everyone to choose what they want to do, regardless of either they're boys or girls. So, um, so yeah, like I said, children learn gender roles early, and in some countries, children show gender expectations sooner, but they eventually they will eventually see that the children's will develop this uh types of ideas about how boys and girls should be. And a little bit better understanding of this would be like gender roles are influenced by cultures and by parenting and by gender roles, which helps us see how everyone should be and how they should be themselves and what makes them happy, and allowing boys to be boys and girls to be girls. So like an example of this would be like as we were growing in our childhood, girls will be playing with Barbies or putting on makeup and putting on dresses and dressing up and stuff like that, thinking that they're like princesses or things like that. While boys, they will play more aggressive, be playing sometimes video games or playing rough with others and those types of stuff with boys and what boys do and what girls do. So in many of the countries, in mostly in Asia and Latino cultures, the the members they try to show the children or child how to respect, elderly and learn to respect them and respect them and obey them. Okay. I'll be doing for my conclusion. So in conclusion, children's growth depends on many things like family, culture, their styles of how they grow up and their friends. How parents raise their children and what society expects from boys and girls can affect how children behave and feel. Children learn social skills by playing and making friends. Everyone deserves everyone develops at their own space, and it's important to support and understand each child. When we know about these things, we help children grow happy, safe, and confident. Thank you.